It's early January and the days are short, it's cold, and there may be a desire to close the door to the garden and reemerge in spring. But winter isn't a season to hide from. It's a season to work with on your terms, at your pace, and with intention. The time you spend now in your garden makes everything easier come spring. It makes your garden healthier, more beautiful, and honestly, it's just enjoyable to spend time in a winter garden. Welcome to the Relish Gardens podcast, where we have conversations about the intersection between the garden and your life and how all of those things are intertwined. How to care for your space, how to prune, basically everything that's related to the design, development, and keeping of a garden. I'm Claire Liddell Hanna, the founder and lead designer at Relish Gardens, where we build, design, and maintain beautiful gardens. Let's dig in. Today, Stevie's back on the podcast to talk about what we're focusing on in our clients' gardens this winter, and also to commiserate a little bit about how weird this season's been. It still doesn't really feel completely like winter. It feels a lot more like fall. And we're in this real holding pattern and waiting for weather to actually shift so we can dive into some of our bigger tasks in the garden.
We talk about our gardens needing the time to go dormant and basically have nothing going on. And it's really important for us as people to also do that every
Yeah.
once in a while when we can. I was hunkered down for a week and a half over break. It was so nice. I'm ready to move around. I'm ready to get out into the garden.
When it's really cold and yucky out there, sometimes it's like you don't really want to get out there and do stuff, but just being outside for a little bit, you know, periodically is really, it's just a great way to be prepared when spring comes. Just being in touch and observing the space and noticing what's happening, and also just being outside is so beneficial. The thing I love most about a winter garden is that I can see. I can
Yes.
see the bones. I can see what's happening. I can identify what the structure is of a garden. And I think for me, being out in the winter garden shows me what the true structure of the garden is. Those anchor plants that hold the garden together sometimes get lost in a flushed out spring and late summer garden. Everything is grown to its full capacity. When you step back into a winter garden, you can really see the bones of the garden. A winter garden that still has interest is that's like peak for me.
If you have really good bones in your garden, you
It's
got to
still
start.
enjoyable, right? It's
Yeah.
still enjoyable in the winter, and it's still beneficial to spend some time in the space and to kind of get to know your garden in that
Mhm.
capacity.
I think about going to botanical gardens in the wintertime. When you go to those gardens that are curated over years and years and you go and you see their bones in the
Yeah.
wintertime, there's something really special about that because even though the deciduous trees might not have leaves on them or even really buds yet, you see their structure and they're like sculptures in the garden. When
Yeah.
nothing else is there, those trees serve the purpose of holding the space in an interesting way.
I really don't like to leave Seattle in May through June, some really July, honestly. I really love it. It's just so spectacular here
Mhm.
during that time of year. So a lot of times when I've traveled, I've been in places in January, February. And so I'll go visit those botanical gardens during January, February. And there's still something interesting to see in a
Mhm.
well-designed and developed garden, and a well-pruned tree is, I mean, it's sculpture, and it holds the space, and it helps you understand the space. I think I've missed out on seeing the huge blooms in a fully fleshed out garden, but I think there can still be something really deeply interesting about a winter garden. It's interesting to look at the life that's in the garden at that time of year too, and to pay attention to it and observe it. Here, we're usually seeing fungus and
Lichen,
the moss. There's
all of
so
the
many
moss.
beautiful
Yeah.
things this time of year just to get out and observe and to participate and be in your space, even if it's for a short time. I think it's really beneficial.
No, I agree. I think the first time I ever went to St. Ed's
Mhm.
was in a colder month. There was no leaves on the trees or anything like that, but a main interest on the hike was all of that chartreuse moss that was just hanging off of the trees and
Yeah.
on the trees and on the ground. And it was just like these beautiful brown pathways through this like chartreuse, bright, brilliant green. It's very stunning. It's really
It is.
beautiful.
Here in Western Washington, there's always something to enjoy. It's not just about the work that's in the garden, it's also about the pure enjoyment of the space and learning to recognize those little things that get lost in a more fleshed out space. It's the simplicity of the garden that I really enjoy that time of year. This year is such a different year than last year.
There were days last year that we didn't start until 10 a.m.
Yeah, because it was
because
too cold.
it was so cold. It wasn't above freezing until after 10 a.m.
This year's been weird. I'm just walking around, I'm seeing bulbs that shouldn't be coming up until like March. They've already started to peak up and like 3 to 4 inches above the ground of growth.
Go back to sleep. It's time to go to bed.
It's like when you wake up at like 1 a.m. and you're like, oh, I'm ready to start my day. But you're like, nah, you have a whole night, but then you can't go back to sleep. I feel like
Yeah.
that's where we're at.
My dad always asks me, how's the weather where you guys are? In Connecticut, where they
Yeah.
live, it's been really cold, like in the teens. And so I told him, I said, man, it's been so mild here. There is a cherry blossom tree right across the street from one of our clients, and it's blooming right now. And he was like, that's not good. That's really bad.
There's a rose blooming at one of our properties today, January 8th. I've just recently read that in order to encourage dormancy, you remove the foliage. And I haven't really had to do a lot of that before, is to like really encourage dormancy. But I'm like, I really don't want to encourage a lot of new growth right now. And I'm hoping we will have some dormancy in the next month or so. If we get a good freeze, it's just going to knock it all off. I'm sure they'll be fine, but I'm just worried about dieback. And then we'll be doing renovation pruning, which I'd prefer not to do in order to keep things looking their best. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
You can't control the weather and you can't control the seasons. You just have to work with what you are given
Right.
and do the best that you can.
Winter is the time where we get the garden ready for spring. The most important work that happens in this time of year is we do a lot of pruning and a lot of cleanup. If you wait until spring to do all this work, you're just playing catch up. I don't like to play catch up.
When spring and summer roll around, if you haven't done some of those winter tasks for maintaining your own garden, then not only are you trying to do weed suppression during the time where your garden is flourishing and beautiful, you're dealing with weeds and you're also trying to prune and you're trying to do all of these things where it's just not sustainable for you. Yeah, it makes it much harder. So if you plan to do these tasks in the wintertime to prepare, then you have some downtime. You can have time where you can just enjoy the garden rather than being flustered and frustrated that you think you have to be out there all the time because there's weeds and there's leaves and there's pruning that has to be done. Make it easier on yourself. Make a little schedule. It doesn't have to be very in depth. It could be like a few tasks, a few little check boxes for every month. And you have the whole month to get that done.
Stevie loves a good checkbox. She is all about the list. She is like, give me a list. I will check it off. I need it.
There is something so satisfying to me. So I have a notes app. And when I discovered that you could add a little circle next to a thing, and then when you tap it, it puts the line through it, I was all about that. Because I usually do it on paper so that I can physically write the line through it. It's like, this is done. I am done.
You're missing the best part, though. What happens if you forgot to write it on the list?
If I did something and I was like, wow, I was really productive today, then I will write a list of things that I did and then cross it off that way. Whether you're in the garden or in your house, or if you're doing errands or something, and you're so busy and you did all of these things, and then you sit down at the end of the night and you're like, wow, I'm so exhausted. What did I even do today? Then you can go back at your list and see, wow, I was really productive. Or maybe you didn't make a list. So you go back and you write down what you did and you see, wow, I was actually really productive today. Instead of just feeling exhausted.
There's not a lot to do in the garden necessarily, but there's enough little projects that it's worth getting out and identifying what those projects are in your own garden, and then maybe putting them on your list. This time of year, we generally aren't doing a lot of weeding, but I'm seeing
Yep.
weeds pop up everywhere. It's like
Yep.
second spring, and
Exactly.
it's like perfect for all of these early spring weeds, and they
Mhm.
are just happy and thriving.
Yeah, that's what we were doing yesterday.
Just weeding in December, or no, we're in
Yeah,
January.
we were in
Weeding in
January.
January.
Yeah.
And last
Mhm.
year we couldn't even start till like 10 because it was too cold.
Yeah. It's just such a flip.
Yeah, it is a very different year than last year. And so it's just being responsive to the weather that you're seeing and paying attention. And even if you'd done it last year, that doesn't mean you're going to do it exactly the same this year.
After you're done with your weeding and kind of tussling the top layers of your soil, that is a really good time for your garden to mulch.
Mhm.
So, like after you've already kind of disturbed the soil a little bit, which you're not really wanting to do that, but when you're working in the garden, it happens. And so, putting that fresh layer of mulch on top, it just kind of feeds it and brings it back to this like equilibrium space where it looks nice. It looks very like finished and complete and tidy, but it's also helping to insulate the roots, insulate bulbs so that when it is freezing and you can't get out there to do weeding, now everything is just put to bed. It's ready for the growing season.
If you do it in midwinter before everything starts poking out of the ground, you're less likely to kind of disturb all of the new growth from the bulbs and perennials. It's just a lot easier to lay down during dormancy than it is when you're trying to like tuck it in around all of the
Yeah.
plants. It just gets very complicated very quickly, especially in some of our gardens that are very densely planted. It helps with weed control in that early spring, not to have that bare soil. I think the only places where I'd be careful is if you've seeded anything to not mulch over those areas. We're cutting back grasses now. They've usually gotten kind of a little bit mutilated by this time of year. And so we usually cutting them back and making space for the new growth come spring. I always am so bummed when I don't do that with grasses, especially if you don't get the chance to go through it and cut it back before the new growth comes. Now you have to pick, either you just let it
Yeah.
go and then that season's lost, or you have to go through and pick out all the dead leaves. It just doesn't look as beautiful
Hmm.
to me when it's intertwined with the old dead grass and the new growth. But when you get that really bright chartreuse new growth in the spring, it's beautiful. So taking the time to get out there to cut back the grasses, just prepare the space for the spring. And doing that over time in the winter helps it not feel so daunting. Just like a little bit every week is usually just enough to set you up for success in the spring. The other thing I know that everybody is thinking about right now is seeds. January for me is seed shopping, picking out the seeds. What you're doing is you're planning for the future. And I think sometimes in January, we all need that. The other thing that I love doing is a seed swap. It feels like such an old timey thing to do, but I think gardening can sometimes be a really personal act that you're participating in on your own. And so anytime you have a chance to kind of go and see the broader community that is gardening and is getting down in the dirt, I think it's a great thing to participate in. I feels like it's like going to like a Pokemon tournament with my kids.
Oh my gosh, you have those seeds? I've been looking for those for 5 years.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. The thing that's really cool is it's seeds that people have saved from their local gardens. So they've been
Hmm.
acclimatized to our region. And it's usually over a period of time. Somebody will have nerded out on their specific tomato that they've been developing. And they're like, I don't even know what the name of it is because it's like the same seed that they've been collecting over all the years. I love Seattle Tilth. I love all the stuff that they're doing. A lot of my understanding about food gardening and whatnot is from the Seattle Tilth, but they are having a seed swap in January. But if you're not in Seattle, look and see what's in your area. And you don't necessarily always have to have something to bring, especially if it's your first time. You just go. It's like foraging. You just take what you need and leave the rest. It's a great way to see what other people are growing and then maybe try something new with like really low stakes.
If you have a garden and you're like very passionate about gardening and sharing things, it's just a nice way in the winter to get together with your community
Mhm.
and share something very personal.
Yeah.
This is from my garden. This is like some of my favorite plants. I've been able to harvest my fruit or my flowers or whatever, and now I'm sharing those with you.
If you have seeds from last year, you can share those too. So they don't necessarily have to be collected from your actual garden. It could just be like, I ordered 30 types of tomatoes last year and I grew 3 of each. Take the rest and swap those with the other people at the seed swap. So it doesn't have to necessarily be something that you grew and harvested the seeds from. It can also be those leftovers
And free.
and free.
Hmm.
Stevie likes a good free. Well, it's a little dopamine hit.
Yeah,
Look at what I found
for free.
for free. It's always great too to have somebody else that's already vouched for that plant.
Yeah.
I like that too. If you're somebody who's interested in developing a tree or training a tree, getting a bare root whip is just a fun project to kind of take on. Sometimes trying to find a specialty variety in the nurseries can be challenging. So if you have a specific variety that you're looking for, I think getting it bare root and getting it young is the way to go. We love Rain Tree Nursery. They have fantastic varieties of edible trees and bushes and whatnot. They open up usually in like July, but you're still able to order this time of year too. We actually did a whole episode on how to choose the right tree for your garden. So if you're interested in that, you can go back to episode 5 and check that out.
When you buy a bare root tree, is it substantially cheaper than if you were to go to the nursery and buy like a 4-year-old tree that already is kind of structured?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, the benefit of buying a 4-year-old tree is that if you're not somebody who wants to develop the structure of a tree, the route to go is to buy it from a nursery when it's that structure has been developed. That's what you're paying for. The additional cost is somebody has developed that structure. There's very specific pruning instructions on how to develop a tree that has good bones. And depending on what the structure is that you want from that tree, you're going to prune it differently in order to get that. And that is all done in the winter generally, especially on fruit trees. You're doing all of that foundational pruning in the winter.
You're going to want to prune those fruit trees in the wintertime to get a better yield of fruit come spring and summertime, right? If you don't do those things during winter to prepare, then you might not get as much or as big of fruit on your trees as you were expecting. We've done a few videos of how to prune in the winter. So if you want to check those out, we'll link them in the show notes below. We also have a free winter guide that we will link below in the show notes. So go ahead and check that out too. Maybe for some of our listeners out there, maybe they have a New Year's resolution of trying something new or learning a new skill. And
Ooh.
buying a bare root tree for a cheaper price and at a younger age can be a really fun, exciting new thing to learn this year, is how to prune it and how to, structure it the way that you want it to be for your garden.
The fun thing is that you get the tree, you get the bare root tree. And this was like really hard for me the first time I did it. I got the bare root tree. I intended to do espaliers in a very specific way along a fence. And so purchasing them from a garden center wasn't going to work because I needed the espalier to be a certain height. And the way that you get that certain height is you basically just cut it. You just cut it in half, essentially, above where you want the buds to sprout. But it felt so weird that first time. I was like, I don't know. That's what the books tell me to do, but it's like such a scary thing. But sure enough, come springtime, it sprouted exactly where I wanted it to sprout based on the cuts, because those cuts induce a hormonal response and send out new branching systems. And so those branching systems are how you develop a structure on a tree. Really how you develop all of the pruning is by paying attention to where your cuts are. That develops certain types of responses. But man, that was so intimidating. But I was like, well, if I mess this one up, I'll probably know next year and then I can get another one if it doesn't work.
It is kind of like lower stakes.
I love beautifully espalier trees. And there's just so many different types of shapes that you can make with them. There's so many different ways to manipulate, especially fruit trees, into a space that you want to use. Oh my gosh, I want to prune pyracantha to fit against a wall and just kind of like espalier that. Pruning's lovely. It's like long form sculpture. You have to be really patient and
Yeah.
come back to it year after year.
When I was taking the plant amnesty classes,
Yeah.
they taught us about pleaching. And
Yes.
I had
Yes.
never heard of that before, and I had
Yeah.
never seen it. And I was just like, wow. It's like weaving the young branches horizontally on a frame
Yeah.
to create like a solid screen versus like when you espalier something, the branches themselves become part of the screen. And then they were showing us pictures of it. And then I was looking it up online. I was like, pleaching? This is really cool.
I think pleaching is a technique that is underused in our area. I think it would be a really great way to, instead of like putting like an arborvitae in for the
Yep.
neighbor, it's a really great way to have a screen between a space. And most of that foundational pruning for those is going to be done in the winter.
Exactly.
The winter is where you get these fun projects. That's what winter gardening feels like for me. These like developmental projects that you can add in.
Regardless of whether you're doing pleaching or espaliering or just pruning your trees for fruit harvesting or just for beautifying them, right? You're doing the work now. And it's not that immediate dopamine hit of I cut it and then a few weeks later I see the full flush of growth. You have to wait months. It's exactly what you were saying. It's like long form sculpture. But when you get that growth, when you see it happening the way that you envision it in your head, it's just like this extreme feeling of
Oh.
like, I'm achieving this. I'm doing it.
For winter pruning, before you start, look up your specific plant and do a quick cursory understanding of it. But you're never going to go wrong by removing the dead, diseased, and damaged. That is always a good place to start. And if you get out there for a few minutes and you remove the dead, diseased, or damaged, you're not going to do any harm, but you're going to set your tree up for success.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Always start with what you know. We talk about how, we have the seasons on the calendar, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it translates directly to the garden. And so paying attention to the weather patterns tells us what to do, not the calendar.
What I do know currently is that we're just kind of putting a hold on our usual plans for winter dormant pruning based on what the weather tells us to do.
I think what gardening has taught me is a really future oriented way of thinking. We were talking to a client and she's like, we're going to put all this stuff in. And our kids are like playing over there and they don't have any kids yet, but gardening teaches you to prepare for the future and the life that you want to see later. It's not immediate gratification. Yeah. Unless you have the list.
You have to have a list.
Yeah.
Even if your list has one thing on it, make a list. You will love yourself for making that list because then when you cross that thing off, put in the
Done.
comments what was on your list that you crossed off. I want to
Ooh.
know.
That's it for today's episode of the Relish Gardens podcast. If you love this conversation, make sure to subscribe. We've got new episodes every week. And if you know a gardening friend who'd love this, send it their way. Sharing the show helps grow our little garden loving community. Until next time, I hope you find something in your garden to truly relish.